Page 18, Dance of the Hours, is a very famous piece for orchestra. I would encourage you just Google Dance of the Hours and listen to the different orchestras play it. It's a nice melody. We're getting notes on more ledger lines. We'll talk about that when we get there. They also have some new terms up above there. We'll talk about those too, eventually. So I go through the system I use to learn a piece of music, and let's see what happens. I'll look it over. I see it's about 4 lines long. Treble and bass clef signs. There's no sharps or flats in the key signature, so we're in the key of C major. Make sure you're doing the scales for C major and A minor, both, because those have no sharps or flats. And in case how do I know which it is? Is it C major or A minor? Well, I look at the end, because most songs, not all, but most songs will end on their main chord. So a song in C major would end on a C major chord. We look at the last measurement. That is a C major chord. There's no E in it, but it's all right. It's still a C major. We're in C major. Take my word for it. 4/4 time signature, we have a pickup beat. We're coming in on beat 4. So the other 3 beats should be someplace else. And if we look at the last measure, you see that's got 3 counts in it. Now we're moving around quite a bit. I like to try and connect everything first if I can with the fingers. So at the beginning, it's here, 4 and 4 and. So we have 2 G's next to each other. Those at the beginning, there's 2 G's. You see it? So we take advantage of the repeated notes to change hand positions. So it's a 1 3 and then a 2. Now we're in this position. So again. 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 3 and during the rest come up and they want 4th. You could use 5th finger there, you don't have to use 4th. During the rest come up again. Now we get these ledger lines. Let's talk about ledger lines. These are the little lines above or below a staff so we can have more notes. Wonderful. It's got notes all over everywhere. Well, you see the lines, the staff lines themselves. It's every other note. Look at the G, or the treble clef. The bottom line in treble clef is an E. The next line is a G, and then a B, a D. See, it's every other note for the lines, and then the spaces are the other notes. That's how it works. It just keeps going up that way. It's every other note. So the top line in treble clef is an F. If you look at the second line, first measure at the end, the last beat, you have a note there on 2 ledger lines above. Well, 1 ledger line would be an A, and 2 would be a C. So those are C's. You need to memorize those notes. I'm not saying you need to memorize all notes on ledger lines, but in my opinion, you should memorize at least 3. Because I can look at the music, I can glance at it, and I can tell if there's 3 ledger lines, or 2, or 1. And so in my opinion, you're going to use them. So just memorize those. But when it starts getting more ledger lines, 4, 5, 6 ledger lines, I can't glance at the music and know how many there are. I have to stop and figure it out. And when I do that, then I take a pencil and I write in the name of the note, so I don't have to figure it out again. Here in the second line, at the end of the first measure, it's a C. Just memorize that note. So 4, and during the rest, come down again. Now reach down. See, that's a stretch, but just come down as best you can. Third line, first measure. I do a 5, they have a 4, and that's okay, but I'm in this position already to stay there. And it's A flat, and that flat is good for the rest of the measure. So that second A is also an A flat. And then you do it again. Now in the last line, in the first measure, you're here. Now we have a note on 3 ledger lines above. Well, remember the top line is an F, 1 ledger line is an A, 2 is a C, 3 would be an E. So that's an E. So you go from E to E here. And again, in my opinion, you should memorize that note. Then come down, then come down again. next to the last measure, I have 2 E's. I'm going to change hand position on the repeated notes. Yeah, left hand. Well, left hand just got the broken chords. You hate them. See, this method book doesn't really teach chords so much, and that's unfortunate because you need to understand them. The first full measure, those notes, it's what's known as a C chord because it's every other note, and the bottom note is a C that identifies what the chord is when it's in this arrangement. So it's a C chord. Next one, so it's a G7 chord. You're not going to remember all this, but I'm just trying to get an idea. Someday I hope they'll get around to teaching you the chords, because it makes reading the music a lot easier if you can just recognize the chords. You look at that first full measure in the bottom staff and you think, oh, that's a C chord. I just play a C chord, one note at a time. Then reach down. Second line, second measure, you got to come up here. We have an F sharp. If you don't want to be up in here, you got big fat fingers, then do a here 3. Here. That way, you stay out here. But if your hand's small enough, the fingering in the book is fine. And then here. Now, 2, 4. So I like to connect these. Now there's another fingering you can try. Rather than 2, 4, you stay where you are. You're using the awkward fingers. I encourage you to use the awkward fingers because the more you use them, the less awkward they become. A lot of the method books, they shy away from them. They give you fingerings where you're only using 1, 2, and 3 fingers most of the time. I think that's a mistake. I'd rather you use these other fingers. So in my opinion, in the second line, third measure, I'd stay here and just 3, 5. Here. And here. Now if you can't reach this, that's the last measure, the first line, the second line. From here and then go to the next line is here. Then use thumb on the F sharp. This way you can reach the G more easily. Now in the third line, they give you a natural sign in parentheses for the F natural. It's called a courtesy sign, remember. It's not necessary, it doesn't need to be there, it's an F natural anyway. But you just had an F sharp, so they're just telling you to be sure and play an F natural here. And then you go back and do it again. Last line, start here, then come up here, it's a G sharp, then come up again, and then come down here. I want to connect all these notes if I can't, but I'll try. And then I want you to come down here. That's okay. There's a couple ways we can do this, and we run across this a lot in piano. You just kind of got to get used to both. One way, this is the last 2 measures, is thumb does both of these notes. Or the little finger does 2 notes. The little finger does 2 notes. You need to be able to do either one. The thumb is fine, and we can use that practice. So it's kind of hard to connect them when they're spread out like that. It's really, got to have pretty large hands for that. Anyway, once you get that, each hand kind of worked out, and then we try and put them together. And I'm going to hesitate all over, I don't care. I just want to know how the fingers are working together. So we're here, here. Through the whole thing that way. Then I go back over it slowly and carefully, and I work out the hesitations. Just concentrate on those spots where you're hesitating. Don't always start at the beginning and play through it each time. Oh, I messed up. You're on the third line. And you say, oh, I messed up. Don't go back to the beginning and start again. Huge mistake. Focus just on that spot and get that worked out, and then keep going. It's important to keep going. Otherwise, you learn the first part of it really well because you've done it a lot, and you can't play the end of it because you haven't done it hardly at all. So focus on the hard parts, but keep going. Don't go back and repeat all the time. Now once I have the hesitations worked out and I can play it all through with a steady beat, some speed. Speed isn't important right now. You keep it as slow as you need to go, but no hesitations. Then I'll add in the articulation. And here we have 2-note slurs. In the right hand, 2-note. And generally with that we'll go down, up, down, up. It's a real gentle motion. It's down. But they've added a staccato on the second note. So now we're going to make the second note short. And you have to be careful about this because a lot of times when we play a short note like that and we lift up, we'll accidentally accent it. We'll play it louder. Because we're coming off, don't. It's the first note gets a... And this 2-note slurs pretty much all the way through for the right hand. The left hand, on the other hand, is all staccato. I'm flexing here at the wrist, on the key, and I'm bouncing off. The whole thing is this way. So. The whole thing is that way. So once I have the articulation under control, then I think about the dynamics. PP is pianissimo, or very soft. That's the melody. That's the left hand, got to be really super soft, very light here. Second line, you get a crescendo. It's abbreviation. This crest is abbreviation for crescendo, which means gradually get louder. They don't tell you how much louder to get. So you're only going to go up to maybe a soft. You just go up a little bit here. Second line, you start out very soft. Now it's a little louder. Now you're very sort of soft. And then all of a sudden you're back down to very soft. And the last line, you get the hairpins, matching hairpins, where you're going to get louder and then you're going to come back. We call it a swell. Swell up and back down. But you're only going to go up to about a soft. You know, so you're starting the last line very soft. Now you're up a little loud. Now you're back down to very soft. Ideally, you're comfortable enough with the music you feel the dynamics. So like in the swell, you can feel it getting louder and softer. It just kind of seems to happen. Then we think about the speed. Moderato's just kind of a walk. You know where you're going. It's not fast. See, the eighth notes, I want to slow it down a little bit, but don't slow it down too much because it needs to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. See, a nice steady walk where you're going someplace and you know where you're headed. So forth. You get an accelerando at the end of the second line. Excel. It's an abbreviation for accelerando, which means accelerate or gradually speed up. Think of a car or something speeding up, or whatever, I don't care. But the idea is, in that last measure, the second line, you're going to gradually start speeding up. You're going to gradually speed up. You rush it. And then in the third line, you get an all tempo. That means resume the speed you were going before you changed it. Well, we sped up. So go back to whatever speed you were going before you sped up, which is, in this case, the first one. You have to be careful with all tempo, because some people say, well, go back to your first speed. That's not what all tempo means. Because you can have several different speeds in a piece. All tempo simply means go back to the speed you were going before you changed it, the last speed you were going. There's another symbol to mean go back to the first speed. That's something else. In this case, it happens to be the same as the first speed, but that's just a coincidence. And then at the end, you get an RIT for retardando, which means gradually slow down. So there's no accelerando anywhere. You're just gradually slowing down. Yeah. How much you slow down? It's up to you. You feel it. What do you feel? Don't slow down so much you're dragging it. Just slow down a little bit. It lets the people know it's about to finish, to get ready to clap or whatever, I guess. And then I'll think about the interpretation. Got all the mechanics out of the way now. I can do it. It's okay. It's comfortable, more or less automatic. We can start feeling the music. Interpreting it. At the beginning, between the staff, they have con grazia, which means graciously. That's a feeling. You feel, you're just playing a nice, gracious piece here. Whatever that is, you feel it. Remember the natural accents? 1, 2, 3, 4. So at the beginning, it's go to here. Feel the natural accents as you're doing this. Remember the dynamics, articulation, speed or tempo, all these other little retardando, accelerando, and all these other little things, they're all part of interpreting the music. That they're telling you some guides to go by to help you interpret the music, but it's up to you to feel them. There is no mark for a natural accent because it just happens naturally. You just feel it. The end, the last measure, I tend to hang on to the last note on the here. You don't have to, you can play staccato. But make sure you hold this down, the dotted half note down the full 3 counts. Because if you play a staccato in the left hand, it means the left hand's done and it's only the right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. See, it comes up. So it's interpreting. Remember the articulation part of the interpreting the piece? And I just kind of feel like I hang on. I just hang on to it. That's how I felt it. That's how I played it. Let's play this together very slowly and check the notes and the rhythms. I'm not going to do any dynamics, louds and softs, and I can't speed up and slow down because the metronome won't. So I'll give us 3 counts because we come in on beat 4, and because there's 8th notes everywhere, I put the metronome to beat 8th notes. But I'll give us 3 quarter note counts to come in. Just come in when I do. 1, and ready, and go, and. 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 And